Jean Piaget was not primarily interested in what children know. He was fascinated by how they come to know it. That subtle shift in focus, from content to process, changed developmental psychology forever. Piaget spent decades observing children, including his own, making detailed notes about the errors they made and the reasoning they applied, and what he concluded was radical for his time. Children are not simply miniature adults with less information. They think in fundamentally different ways at different points in their development. Piaget proposed that cognitive development unfolds in 4 universal stages, each building on the last, each representing a qualitatively distinct mode of understanding the world. These stages are not just educational checkboxes, they are windows into the evolving architecture of the human mind. The first stage is the sensorimotor stage, spanning roughly from birth to age 2. At this point, infants have no internal mental representations of the world. They know reality only through direct sensory experience and physical action. A rattle exists only when it is being held and shaken. A face exists only when it is visible. The infant lives in an eternal present tense, unable to mentally represent objects that are absent. But across these 2 years, enormous progress is made. By the end of the sensorimotor stage, a child has developed object permanence, the understanding that objects continue to exist even when they cannot be seen, heard, or touched. This is the cognitive foundation on which everything else is built. The second stage is the preoperational stage, running from roughly age 2 to 7. Here, language explodes onto the scene. The child can now use symbols, words and images to represent objects and events. This is a monumental leap. A child can now think about a dog without a dog being present. But thought at this stage is still limited in important ways. It is egocentric, meaning the child has difficulty seeing situations from another person's perspective. It is animistic, meaning the child attributes life and intention to inanimate objects. And it lacks logical operations. The child cannot yet reverse a mental action or hold multiple dimensions in mind at once. Ask a preoperational child whether there is more water in a tall, narrow glass or a short, wide glass after you pour the same water between them, and most will say the tall glass has more, deceived by the appearance of height. The third stage is the concrete operational stage, from roughly 7 to 11. Here, logic begins to emerge, but it is grounded in concrete, tangible objects and situations. The child now understands conservation, the principle that quantity does not change simply because appearance changes. They can classify objects into categories and arrange them in series. They can reverse mental operations. Crucially, egocentrism declines. The child becomes capable of understanding that other people have different perspectives. This stage marks the beginning of genuinely logical thought, though it is still anchored to what is real and present. The fourth and final stage is the formal operational stage, beginning around age 12 and continuing into adulthood. Here, thinking becomes truly abstract. The adolescent or adult can reason about hypothetical situations, construct logical arguments from premises that may have no real-world referent, and think systematically about possibilities rather than just actualities. They can consider what might be, not only what is. This is the stage at which scientific reasoning becomes possible, formulating hypotheses, testing them mentally, drawing abstract conclusions. Piaget believed these stages were universal and sequential. Every child, regardless of culture, passes through them in the same order. Biological maturation sets the timetable, but experience is the fuel. Children are not passive recipients of information. They are active constructors of knowledge, constantly building and revising their mental models of the world through a process Piaget called equilibration. When new information fits existing understanding, the mind assimilates it. When it does not fit, the mind must accommodate, restructure itself to incorporate the new reality. Development is the product of this ongoing negotiation between the child and the world. Piaget's framework has not escaped criticism. Later researchers found that children sometimes demonstrate capacities earlier than Piaget suggested, particularly when tasks are simplified or made more familiar. Cultural factors also play a larger role than Piaget acknowledged. But none of this diminishes the core insight, that cognitive development is a staged, constructive process, that children are active thinkers, and that the mind at 7 is not simply a smaller version of the mind at 17. Every teacher who designs age-appropriate curricula, every parent who adjusts how they explain things to a toddler versus a teenager, every therapist who considers a client's developmental history is drawing, whether they know it or not, on the intellectual legacy of Jean Piaget. His 4 stages remain the most enduring map we have of the long journey from infant sensation to adult thought. Subscribe to Psychology Theories Explained to explore more of the ideas that shape the modern mind.